of people uh, perceiving that you are disrespecting the cultural belief. Okay, so, you have to be careful with things like that. Cognitions, a lot of times kids will have the overgeneralization that everything's going to be terrible forever. And a lot of that has to do with their kids can't think long term. Their sense of time and space often gets distorted. Or in general, and then when a trauma happens, they kind of get confused about what happened first when. Like, for example, I helped in a situation, a kind of a disaster response after a child had drowned, a 4-year-old boy drowned, and so I was helping explain to his 4-year-old classmates why he wasn't there anymore. And so one of his 4-year-old classmates said, well, I was there with him in the pool when he drowned, and I was trying to rescue him, but he didn't listen. But in fact, the child was not there with him when he drowned. The child was alone. And so the problem is that sometimes teacher or parents will say things like, "Stop lying. Stop making that up." But the deal is like with 4-year-olds, what happens is that they get that time-space thing kind of confused. And this particular boy actually had been at that boy's house in his pool like a month earlier. And so he knew that he'd been to that pool where the boy drowned. And so he thought that he was there during the drowning, even though he wasn't. So, so what do you think you ought to say to a kid when they say that? Why do you think you? Okay, so yeah, you could say that. Sometimes it's helpful just to say, well, I see my student back there. She knows what do I like to do? Reflect feelings. Yes, I like to reflect feelings of like. You're feeling kind of confused about it, of like why you weren't able to help him, and but it seems like you really wanted to be there. You really wished you could have rescued him, and it wasn't your fault. You weren't there. It wasn't your fault. It was an accident. So so you just kind of reflect the feelings and give the information and reflect what his intention was. Now, the fifth area is our doubts about God. And sometimes kids will abandon their spiritual rituals and routine and kind of develop a sense of meaninglessness. Now, a lot of times, actually, it's kind of interesting because in the literature, you'll see things and you'll see those people talk about the first 4 categories of symptoms. Oftentimes, they leave out this 5th one, the spirituality. I like to include it because I think spirituality is also a very strong coping mechanism. And a lot of kids use spirituality as a coping mechanism. And so we need to recognize when that strength of theirs has been maybe disruptive so we can help bring that back strong for them. We want to be aware of these 5 areas. And then when we get toward the end, we'll look at some things we can do in these 5 areas. So, okay, now, what are those 5 areas that how kids are affected? What's the first one? Affect, so affective, behavioral, physical, cognitive, spiritual. So we got our 5. Remember that big 5 because we're going to do something with it a little bit later on. Let's see. So, speaking of doing something with that, we got, remember those 5. I'm going to see if we can bring this thing up here. Oops. Oh, that's not working. I wanted to show you something, well, as kind of in their own words type thing of kids after Katrina. I think you're supposed to be able to go Control-click, but I don't know if that's going to work. So let's do this. Uh-oh. That's probably why it wouldn't let me. Anybody know their password? Do I have to do that? Oh, guest? Wireless? Well, down, down, down. Oh, down here? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Well, let's. Okay. Let me see if. Well, let's see if. Let me see if it'll just go for us. Let's see. No, it doesn't like that. All right. We'll go. We'll come back to that. Come back to that part. So, trauma responses vary by age. Okay, so preschool kids, as I mentioned before, will typically have this excessive clinging and crying. And whereas elementary school children will have this regression, sleep troubles, and irrational fears. Now, it's interesting because preschool children often, one of the other things that they do is that they worry. Preschool children will often worry that they themselves are going to die. Elementary school children worry that someone else is going to die, like that their mommy or daddy is going to die. So that there's a kind of a difference of that. And adolescents will often withdraw, have depression, kind of delinquent type behavior. Some people think adolescents have delinquent behavior anyway, but it usually tends to increase after trauma. And children will often have certain characteristics after a trauma, like these recurrent intrusive visualizations like we talked about. He's going, I told you we should have checked this before.
I'm not going to say that.
Oh, because you're nice. How about you want to log me in? Oops, I got So a lot of times the kids will have these recurrent intrusive visualizations, and you'll see them, and they're. Oh, I'm not supposed to walk away from the mic. I tell you what. All right. Okay. Let's see if it works. Where's that thing? Okay. Oh, get the latest flash play. What you think? What do you think? Maybe you work on that and I'll talk. All right. So children will play out what happened. So for example, after Hurricane Katrina, I had a boy who jumped up on a table and he said, "Oh, the water's coming, it's going to get me." And he jumped down off the table and he fell down dead. And fortunately, though, his 6-year-old little cousin was with him. And she ran over and she had this little medical kit and she doctored him, and then he came back to life. Popped back up, just came right back to life. Good thing. Then he went rummaging through all this stuff that people send after a hurricane. You know, after a hurricane, don't send stuff. Just send Walmart gift cards. You know, because people will send this junked out stuff and it takes up lots of space. Anyway, the kid's sifting through these toys. He finds a dart gun. That probably wasn't the best thing to send in a hurricane kit, but nevertheless, it's there. He finds a dart gun. He starts shooting around the room. Pow, pow, get away from my family. Pow, pow. And then he gets shot, and he falls down dead again. And his little cousin runs over, doctors him. He pops back up to life. And they kept playing this where he kept falling down dead and then popping back up to life. So what do you think that he was trying to communicate through his play? Okay, so some of his experiences that he saw during the event. And so, in fact, you know, he had been in that situation where the floodwaters were coming, and he was playing